Welcome to Modern Anarchy, the podcast exploring sex, relationships, and liberation. I'm your host, Nicole.
I tried to keep her quiet, but she's screaming inside of me. I tried to keep her hiding, oh, shut up. I tried to keep her quiet, but she's a wild, wild woman.
On today's episode, we have Star. Join us for a relationship anarchy research conversation. Together we talk about learning to see the beauty in all of our relationships, finding creative ways to reconfigure our connections, and deconstructing the intimacy escalator. Hello, dear listener, and welcome back to Modern Anarchy. I am so delighted to have all of you pleasure activists from around the world tuning in for another episode each Wednesday. My name is Nicole. I am a sex and relationship psychotherapist with training in psychedelic integration therapy, and I am also the founder of the Pleasure Practice, supporting individuals in crafting expansive sex lives and intimate relationships. Dear listener, every time that I get to share one of these relationship anarchy research conversations, I am so honored. I am so honored that a listener, so many different listeners from around the world have trusted me to come onto the show, to come onto a Zoom call, and to really open up about their personal exploration of relationship anarchy. It is an honor and a joy to have these conversations. Every single time I do, I am transformed and changed. And the fact that I get to share it with you, dear listener, when there is very few resources on relationship anarchy, that I get to do this every couple of weeks and share it because a listener like you has trusted me. Wow. So thank you, dear listeners. Thank you. I am so honored to be creating this space with you. So honored. And yeah, this is a continuation of my dissertation, which is published and available on my website. If you want to read it for free, you can read all 200 pages about relationship anarchy. And if you do want to come on the show, all of the contact and links are there for you to submit your answers and to, come on the show to talk to me about relationship anarchy so that we can keep growing and expanding together. All right, dear listener, if you are ready to liberate your pleasure or sign up for the relationship anarchy research conversations, then you can head on over to modernanarchypodcast.com, linked in the show notes below. And I want to say the biggest thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. You are supporting the long-term sustainability of the podcast, keeping this content free and accessible to all people. So thank you. If you want to join the Patreon community, get exclusive access into my research and personal exploration, then you can head on over to patreon.com/modernanarchypodcasts, also linked in the show notes below. And with that, dear listener, please know that I am sending you all my love, and let's tune into today's episode. And so the first question that I ask every guest on the podcast is, how would you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
No pressure.
What was I going to say? I'd introduce myself as someone who was actually a political anarchist even before I was a relationship anarchist, and and just always had an oppositional attitude towards authority and like a questioning attitude towards norms and structures of like power that existed around me, and just I don't know. I wouldn't say a critical lens because it wasn't like I was like out of the uterus with fully developed critical thinking skills or anything like that, and I'm still am working on. Yeah, sorry, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but that I'm someone who is attracted to the unconventional and towards questioning preconceived notions that society feeds us. And I think getting out of some messy relationships, monogamy was one of those things that I deconstructed, I think a couple of years ago on a bigger level. And then I found my way into relationship anarchy because I don't know, polyamory had too much of that vibe of like I'm catching feelings for everybody, and then I started realizing I was like on the aromantic spectrum, like it demi-romantic particularly and so finding that unrestrainedness of like not being in a monogamous escalator relationship while not having the expectation that I'm like super hyper romantic or anything like that
Mhm.
has been a like liberating idea for me, and just also being able to apply my anarchist ideals on an interpersonal level and trying, or at least attempting to the best of my ability. Yeah.
Mm.
And sorry, that was a whole long thing, but
That's okay. People get excited in this space and they come in, they're like, here I am. And that's great. So I appreciate the energy. And
hmm.
yeah, it's a joy to have you in the space. And I'm excited to get to talk to you and learn more about your practice of relationship anarchy. And
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
yeah, the first question of the research is, what is relationship anarchy?
Relationship anarchy, I mean, thinking about political anarchy, it uproots all hierarchy. It uproots all these power structures and also like just all these oppressor oppressed dynamics. And I
Mhm.
think that relationship anarchy does the same thing on an interpersonal
Mhm.
level where you try your best to communicate so that there's not power imbalances, so that there's not and so sorry, I'm trying to think this
That's
through a
okay.
little bit more, but basically that interpersonal style that's like very egalitarian, very like, and that values connection regardless of what form that connection takes. Like if you cherish your family, if you cherish your friends, if you cherish your romantic interests, whoever, you cherish your hobbies, special interests, like that, there's not a hierarchy of value that you place on that, and you don't have that escalator style of like valuing your partner or partners above everything else in your life romantically or whatnot. And
Hmm.
yeah, that's how I've conceived of it as I've done my research into it. And yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, how do you practice it then? We'll hop to the next question because that's a
Mhm.
great foundation of some of the key points of relationship anarchy. But I guess there's that question of what does that look like in your day-to-day life, as you're saying, not riding the relationship escalator and these other pieces. What
It
does that look
honestly means
like?
like rejecting like the idea of being, for me personally, I mean, this looks obviously different for everyone, and it can be practiced very differently in different social contexts and different situations and everything, just as a caveat. But for me,
Right.
it means just rejecting the idea of like getting married, settling down with someone in the way of like that society expects me to, and prioritizing a romantic relationship above every other style of relationship, and not like if I were to ever get into one, I'm not really planning on getting into one, but it's like it's simple things like making sure to reach out as much to my friends as I am to like the one person I'm romantically interested in, and like my cultivating my family relationships, and just like cultivating my relationships with my hobbies and nature, and also my relationship with myself, and just like seeing relationships as like a holistic thing rather than like prioritizing and like striving for one type of relationship to overpower all the others. And I
Hmm.
think I that's what I would say, and just not putting too much investment into established relationships as society is wanting me to, especially establish exclusive monogamous relationship escalator types of relationships, and just cultivating connection for its own sake rather than it being like this instrumental thing for some social script that we've been fed.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's really hard to do, right?
Oh yeah,
Because
absolutely.
yeah, so much of the society is giving us a, like you said, a script of how to relate, how to create a good life. The trajectory, right? That's that relationship escalator of you date exclusively, you get married, you
Mm-hmm.
have kids, you know, die
Mm-hmm.
together. La, like what a happy romantic fairy tale, right? And of course, in relationship anarchy, if people want to ride the relationship escalator, there's nothing saying that you can't do that. It's this question of consciousness around it, where I'll at least say for myself, for so much of my life, I didn't even know that there was an alternative. It was this is
Mm-hmm.
what you do to have a
I definitely
meaningful
understand that
life.
because like for a lot of my life I
Yeah.
sought out affection, but like
Hmm.
the only way I knew for a while of how to throughout like middle school and high school is through conventional relationships. I mean, mostly one relationship in particular that was like on and off, but and it really set up like kind of a toxic mindset, and it's been nice to take a step back the last couple of years and deconstruct that, and just instead of being all consumed by the romantic aspect and the societal scripts and what I'm on all of that and the relationship escalator, I think it's been nice to just see relationships in a holistic way and seek out affection in a way that is more catered towards me and my preferences, and not in just like selfish way of like I'm the only person that matters and my needs or whatever, but like working my relationships into my personal philosophy of like I remember being very young and being drawn to the idea of free love. Like I was just like,
Hmm.
oh, you can just like I've been a little bit slutty for a long time. So
Great.
I've been
Love
like
that.
I was like I've always found appeal in the idea of like having multiple like sexual relationships and just intimate
Hmm.
relationships with people, and I've been like kind of a touchy person in general. And so the idea of a relationship that's completely monogamous and exclusive like in all forms of affection, it just sounds so suffocating to me.
Sure, right. Like, how could you get all of those needs met in one
Yeah.
single person, right?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. And it's such bullshit that our society like puts that pressure on us to be that person that's like the absolute anchor for all of a partner's needs. That's just not fair. Like for there to be that expectation. And I also think I definitely question like the idea like if you can have like multiple fulfilling friendships, why can't you have multiple fulfill if that's the path you're going down, like why can't you have multiple fulfilling romantic relationships or just intimate relationships in general, whether there's an element of romance in that or not?
right.
Or I've definitely been exploring queer platonic relationships, and
Cool.
I do have a queer platonic type person. I don't know if we put a specific label on it, but that's the vibes I get because I mean, we do traditionally romantic things like holding hands and cuddling under a
Hmm.
blanket, or like things like that are like very like atypical for a typical friendship, but there's no real romantic intention behind it. But then I have another person who I have romantic feelings for, and I'm like, and then I have a person who's basically like my brother, and I value all those relationships all the same. And then I have my actual little brother. And so all these relationships, I just recognize all the ways it can enrich me without it having to be like a hierarchy type thing where I'm prioritizing one relationship over the other in all instances. Sorry, that was like very long-winded, probably.
Yeah, no need to apologize. That's all great content for us to explore. I think yeah, it's really tricky. I mean, the concepts of relationship anarchy, often in the community, we talk about how this is possible when you look at it as friendship, right? Yeah, we have multiple friends
Mhm.
that we're connected to. And in our friendships, we see that each of our friends brings out a different side of ourselves, right? And we
Absolutely,
can
yeah.
enjoy that. Wow, okay, I hang out with this friend and we do these sorts of activities, and I feel this part of
Hmm.
me activated. And I also really enjoy this other friend who does a completely different thing. And it's really nice when we can bring all of those friends together and have a great time all together.
Hmm.
But so much of our social conditioning is teaching us to look for the one, the one, the one, the
The
one.
one, the one, the one. It's kind of
Which,
I call BS on the one.
well, sure. And
Like,
I mean,
on any level. Like I mean, not to say not to be like ace or arrow exclusionary of like okay, so like if there's like exclusivity in the romantic sense or the sexual sense where like you are only attracted romantically or sexually to that one person, then that's a natural organic outgrowth. But if it's like this imposed social contract thing, I think that reeks of hierarchy and power dynamics and all of
right.
that, and so
Yeah.
toxic social conditioning.
Right. Yeah, because there's definitely folks who practice monogamy or sexual exclusivity and relationship anarchy. And I think the key difference
Mhm.
there is that it's a conscious choice to enact that and
Yeah,
to go through that path. There's
absolutely.
people who do polyamory
And
for
it's
years and then
congruent to their
choose.
identity. It's not like you're having to rob someone of a part of themselves to
Sure.
engage in that dynamic. That's how I'd conceptualize it, because otherwise it feels like power and hierarchy, if that makes sense. Sorry, I didn't mean to like talk over you.
It's okay. Yeah, yeah, no worries. Um, yeah, I think. Yeah, there's definitely people who practice relationship anarchy and monogamy and enjoy sexual exclusivity. And yeah, I think that big difference is that those folks choose that consciously and are aware that there are other ways of constructing relationships that are
Mhm.
possible and are doing that in a way of still bringing equal levels of importance to the other relationships they have in their lives. I think if I can speak to my
Uniform
own
justice,
journey,
yeah,
right? Like,
to their
yeah.
platonic and familial relationships rather than like disregarding those for the sake of the romantic or sexual relationship or whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 totally. Yeah. And if I can speak to my own journey with it, right? When I was first coming into this, I had no idea that there was any sort of alternative, right? And so that is a lot of what we all sit in coming into this world. And then I think the deeper part of my understanding of this as a psychotherapist is the level of unconscious internalization of this, of even someone like myself who has wanted to practice this, has been practicing this for years. There's still so much internalized conditioning that is so deep within my unconscious. And we recognize that within other systems of oppression, right? Is, oh shit, we don't even recognize the way that we're enacting these harmful assumptions, right? And these harmful systems of oppression. And I would say that this mononormativity, not monogamy, right? But the mononormativity, the sense that this is the only way of constructing a healthy relationship is deep within all of us. And so it takes an active process to deconstruct that in our unconscious. And that has been the most fascinating journey of my life that continues every single day. I just get deeper and deeper into the spiral.
So much. It sounds like a great
Mhm.
spiral to go down. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
not to like discount the stress of all of that as well, and actively deconstructing toxic cultural things. And I mean, I definitely understand that growing up in Mormon
Oh,
culture.
sure. Sure, sure, sure. That's
Yeah.
a whole
And
path.
all the toxicity, homophobia,
Yeah.
like queer phobia, patriarchy, and very exclusivity oriented norms and kind of authoritarian control that went into that. And
Hmm.
I mean, thankfully, I left pretty early on. I was like
Good.
12, and I was
Yeah.
like traumatized, and the religion made the trauma worse. And I was just like, fucking sick of this. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
I kind of charted my own path, but the assumption of like monogamy and mononormativity, like you're talking about, just still crept in
Sure.
quite a lot
Yeah.
throughout my experience. I feel so heard when I hear like these relationship anarchist narratives as well,
Right.
and like I can relate that to them on such a strong level.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think we need examples of people doing it. So when we hear other relationship anarchists who are going down a similar path, it gives us a example that this is possible, that there are other people who are thinking about this,
Hmm.
co-creating these sort of worlds, and we are social beings. And so we look to other people. That's just basic group psychology, right? We look to other people of how should we be showing up in the world, right? That's why we have different cultural norms, right? As we exist in a group and there are things that become normalized, and that's how the culture runs. And so we need examples of relationship anarchists to speak to what this looks like in their lived life, right? So that way that we can say, oh, okay, they've climbed that mountain, I can climb that mountain. And of course, like you were saying at the beginning, everyone's path up the mountain or down the spiral, whatever we want to say. Maybe it's going
Hmm.
down deeper, deeper, deeper. Everyone's path is going to be different. That's part of the beauty of relationship anarchy, right? Is taking the scripts away to create your own world of meaning making. And so that means that it's all going to be expansive and different, and each person's going to have a unique experience of relationship anarchy, which is so exciting.
Yeah, I love I mean, anarchism in just all its facets has always had a DIY ethos, and
Yeah.
like DIY that shit with your interpersonal relationships. Like that's a fucking badass thing to do. Like to
Hmm.
not lean on these social scripts or like try to deconstruct them as much as possible, as much as like you said, there's this unconscious conditioning.
It's so deep. Like it's so deep in my unconscious. I have devoted my life to studying this topic and it still comes up, which is human, of course, right? But I'm just
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
damn, damn, another thing? Oh, that? Oh, shit. Okay. I gotta keep learning. I am sitting down. I am being taught. The universe keeps throwing experience after experience in my face, and I say, wow, okay, And so it's very humbling.
Yeah,
Uh,
that is
yeah.
life.
Yes,
It's part
it
of the
is.
beauty of life as well. Like
Yeah.
that the spiral is never ending at the
No.
exploration. Like The one person that I have
Mm-hmm.
formed romantic feelings for, one of the major reasons is that wanderlust,
Mm,
that just like ever expansive desire to like learn and grow and just
sure. Hot.
absorb different perspectives and to
Yeah.
have like deep philosophical conversations. I was spending so much time with them yesterday, and like it's just like this boundless feeling of just like a reservoir of love and just appreciation and just noticing every little detail of who they are. And I can find just a great deal, just as valuable of connections from my purely platonic connections and just like my very egalitarian sense of things where I'm like, if this person brings me value and they are here for me in my life and they are supporting me and like whatever value they bring to my life, that's what how do I put it? That's inherently fulfilling, and it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
need to be put in this like social script of like and this hierarchy of value just because the nature of the feeling is different.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think that that brings a level of awareness to your life and your relationships rather than looking at one person, one person, one person, one person. And again, this is for people for monogamy or non-monogamy that practice
Hmm.
relationship anarchy. The key piece being that we look at our full community of people, all as loving relationships that see us, that highlight different parts of ourselves that we are committed to, right? Our community commitment. And so when you start to see all of your relationships in this lens, because relationship anarchy is about all of your relationships, there
Hmm.
starts to be this saturation that comes into your life because you realize, wow, I get love from so many different places. How beautiful, right? And so
Like
it's
even thinking about the
why,
love I get from my pets,
yeah,
like
totally. I've heard that before on the
and
show.
like
Yes, yes,
and just
yes.
like taking time to appreciate those things
Mm-hmm.
and the feeling of belonging I get from like engaging in good music or good art and like that sense of catharsis, even though it's not like a strictly interpersonal connection, just like having an expansiveness of appreciation of all the value you get from your connection with people, non-human animals, the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so
Right.
expansive and like you said, maybe this isn't exactly what you said, but like so layered and so and you get a depth and expansiveness that you don't get if you just focus all your energies and passion onto one person or
Right.
multiple partners or whatever. Like because I'm like that's the other thing with polyamory is like there can be
Right.
hierarchical polyamory where it's like, oh, this is closed off in like and kind of walled off and like we're focusing our affections in this specific sphere of people and like relationship anarchy is like fuck the borders.
Mm.
I'm just like political anarchy is like fuck the borders.
Sure. Yeah, to be able to have more expansive, yeah, expansive
Hmm.
ways of connecting. I appreciate the discussion of pets as well because I think that that's something that I also have seen in some of my conversations with relationship anarchists in the space is, yeah, what do we mean by the word relationship? I think that in very typical Western understanding, we again mean that in a romantic sense to a one. And so to understand we have all of us, again, all of us have multiple relationships, okay? All of us. Not all of us have sex with multiple people, but all of us
Hmm.
have multiple relationships. So that is a given. And then beyond the relationships to just humans, yeah, it's true. We do have relationships to ourselves, which everything I study in psychology says our sense of self is created by your relationships. So that's a fun head spin that I continue to reflect on. And we also have relationships to our pets. We also have relationships to our ecosystem, right? Nature, the trees outside,
Which
all
absolutely,
these.
I think
Yeah,
it's so essential that we cultivate that as much as possible because we're facing ecological disaster. This is a whole kind of side tangent, but like
sure.
and we cultivate that relationship and I have a very animistic understanding of things where I'm like every like living and like deep ecology and like every living thing is valuable and has like some sort of like awareness to it and like awareness is woven into like every tree, every like piece of moss, like possibly every rock if I'm expanding that even further. Like I just everything has an energetic trace and a lived experience and just
Mhm.
respecting the vast intersections of that. So I consider myself like an eco-anarchist is like dismantling the human systems of oppression also requires us to dismantle the oppressive attitude we have towards nature. Anyway, that was a whole side tangent, but yeah, I like going on those.
Well, it's all related, right? It's a
Yeah.
relationship to our planet, to our ecosystem,
Mhm.
and then the power structures and how those impact that, right? It's all related, our relationship to ourself, right? We could go down a whole rabbit hole of who
Mhm.
is the self, these identities that we have, and all of that. And I would say that's also related to relationship anarchy. Any sort
Absolutely. Like
of,
there's no this like
yeah.
atomized self that is
Mhm.
like pushed against the world. Like I think that's a very Rene Descartes delusion.
Sure.
Like
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
the mind body duality. Oh, I mean, not that that's necessary. Sorry, but just this like idea of like the isolated individual kind of feeding into solipsism, like we're our own main characters, and that like the world is the backdrop instead of realizing how interwoven we are with everything around us and our context and our situation.
Right, exactly, exactly. Yeah, the field of psychology definitely plays into that by saying this is the individual, the individual, the individual, the individual. And a lot of the concept of psychology originally was trying to establish itself as a hard science, right? Like we're
Hmm.
legit. And, based off of very Newtonian physics sort of understanding of science, of this thing does that thing, and that's it goes here to there, right? Versus an understanding of quantum mechanics, of understanding that, oh, hey, like modern science says, nothing exists alone. Everything is impacted. Even the observer of the, thing impacts the,
Quantum entanglement is batshit.
yeah, and I don't even know
Say
enough to
that,
speak
like quantum
to
entanglement, like you're saying that a particle here is like emulating the behavior of a particle
it.
in the Andromeda galaxy. That's fucking crazy. Like,
I can't even speak with any level of expertise to any of it.
yeah,
Truly,
I mean,
I'm
I can't really speak
humbled.
with expertise either, but I did I like researching into just different theories in general, and I had
Right.
a little bit of an obsession with like theoretical physics when I was like a middle schooler. So
Sure,
I've
sure.
like little tidbits
Totally.
uh of knowledge still in there.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. And so I think it's so important for all of us, and particularly the field of psychology, to update our understanding of the self, to understand that the self is in relation. There is just no individual self, just as much as there is no individual atom just acting on its own, right? Like it's impacted by the environment constantly. And so our sense of self is always being impacted by who we are relating to and what we're relating to, right? Our environment. If you live in a food desert, your understanding
Hmm.
of food and life and well-being is very different, right? These are all pieces. It's a systems
Hmm.
level of understanding that all impact our sense of self. And so I hope that relationship anarchy as a movement continues to reflect on that. And hence
Absolutely.
the fact that it is a never-ending exploration of the ways that systems are impacting us and our relationships.
Hmm.
All of us will go to our graves still unpacking that and going, damn, there was more to learn, you know?
Hmm. Absolutely. And there's just like such limited time as well. And
Yeah.
so trying to pack in all of that deconstruction and all of that reconstruction and like, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to strive to, but we're never going to perfect it, obviously.
Hence the word practice. I really like to say practicing
Mhm.
relationship anarchy. It's something that I do and get deeper in, right? It's not a final destination that I'm going to be hitting perfectly. It's a truly a practice, and many of the days I will fail in that practice. Or well, what does even failure mean? So many of the days I will be humbled and on my face, you know what I mean,
Mhm.
by the practice and still expanding into it. But yeah, I'm thinking about the next research question, which is why do you practice relationship anarchy? Why is this important to you?
Ever since I was young, I've hated being constrained. I've hated
Sure.
feeling like I don't have agency, like I don't have options, like this is the thing I have to do. And
Hmm.
so I've always, to some extent, bucked against social expectations. I mean, it's part of being neurodivergent as well, I
Hmm.
would guess, and always just very much oriented towards questioning things and questioning assumptions that I've had and that other people have had. And once I've had experiences with some kind of escalator type, exclusivity type relationships, I just decided that it wasn't for me. Like all the drama that surrounded and like the whole idea of breaking up was really just a really emotional, it's such an emotional toll and like it's such an expected emotional toll. But when I was like watching videos about like de-escalation of relationships rather than like breaking up and tearing apart, and I was like, oh, because you don't have these hierarchies of value, you can like, okay, just because we are not clicking in a romantic or sexual way doesn't mean that any sort of relationship that we have has to go in the bin, like,
Mm-hmm.
like, and
Mm-hmm.
so just having the autonomy to connect with the breadth and depth that I want without being defined by social scripts is just such a liberating idea for me. And I just love the freedom that I have that I can, and the freedom I mentioned I was romantic, but I also have like fluidity in where I am on the aromantic spectrum. So sometimes there's been times where I've been like romance repulsed and different things. And so having the fluidity of being like, okay, I don't have these established romantic relationships and these established like escalator expectations. So I can simply just exist with what my identity is and like communicate that with the people that I'm with if it comes up and is relevant, and they can communicate their own fluidity with me, and we can kind of negotiate. And what was the term in like the kind of manifesto, customize your commitments?
Mm-hmm.
To me that doesn't mean like exclusivity as much in my context, but just like customizing the way that the relationship is going to work, how much intimacy the relationship is going to include at a given time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love that freedom. I love that autonomy. I love the creativity that is
Right.
involved in it, and like the expansive thinking. And
Mm-hmm.
there's so much I love about the philosophy. And also because I'm a political anarchist, like in the sense that I want to abolish all these hierarchies of value that we have that are unhealthy for our society, and just want to like liberate each individual to like live the most fulfilling life that they can, whether they're human or not as well. I definitely think that relationship anarchy helps me ground myself in that and in those values on an everyday level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, getting to apply them into your relationships. And yeah, it's so important to be able to construct relationships that bring you joy, that bring the people you're relating to joy. And what I've found in my research is that that requires a deep embrace of change, because if we really want to be in community connection with folks and we don't want to have a breakup, we want to be able, I don't even use the word de-escalate because that suggests that going back down, there is another escalator that
Okay,
should
yeah,
be
you're
up.
right.
So I usually say reconfigure, right? Is okay,
Oh,
we're
that's a
going to
better term. That's a better
reconfigure.
term for sure. Yeah.
Totally, right. So let's reconfigure the way we're relating. Let's reconfigure the way we are relating. And that means that, gosh, that's an ongoing conversation, okay, for the rest of my
What
life.
role has like not just in romantic relationships, but like
Yeah.
what role has reconfiguration played in your life? To ask you a question.
Oh man.
Like just like maybe a single example or something. I don't want to like demand like you tell your whole life story, but like I'm
Yeah, for
curious.
sure. For
Like, can
sure.
you give me an example of like a major reconfiguration in your life that has like ended in a kind of fulfillment? And yeah.
Yeah, so many of them, right? I'm thinking about, yeah, it's just really complex. I guess when I think about reconfiguration in my own life with the people that I've related to, it has required such a level of communication and insight that I have never experienced in my life, and I'm still navigating, right? Because I'll be in a relationship with someone and I can notice that something feels off. There is something going on where it doesn't feel good. And there is a part of me
Mhm.
who wants to go, fuck this shit, I'm out.
Oh yeah, I get
Goodbye,
that.
right? Goodbye. I don't want to be a part of this storm anymore. And so, what does it mean
Hmm.
to take a deep breath, to notice that
Yeah.
feeling, to know that I am not my thoughts, and then actually try to sit and be like, okay, so what is not working here? Maybe we no longer want to have sex anymore because we're no longer
Hmm.
sexually compatible. But gosh, I love you so much. I love snuggling with you. I love seeing you all the time. And so, we're going to
Hmm.
take this part of our relationship out and off the table. And then a year later, maybe it comes back on actually. And it feels
Hmm.
good again because we have changed. How we look at our romantic relationship and sexual dynamic has changed. And so that feels good. But I've also had relationships. I'm a rock climber. I'm in a rock climbing community.
Hmm.
Okay, let's be real. A queer rock climbing relationship anarchy community gets a little small. And so, like everyone knows everybody. We all know who each other is. We are
You're like a little
dating.
lesbian commune.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
I mean, we
not
don't
lesbian. I
all,
didn't mean to be like very hyper specific in the
you
label,
know,
but like a queer,
yeah,
I don't
it's
know, sapphic,
I mean,
whatever.
right, we don't all live together, but there's only so many rock climbing gyms in Chicago, you know what I mean? And so we all kind of know who each other is, and so there is a level of relating here that is otherworldly for me. Like I have It is so cool, but it's so hard. Like it is so incredibly difficult because unlike in my previous dynamics where if I had a breakup, it was like, cool, I'll never see you again. Goodbye. These are people that I see every single week because there are only so many gyms to climb at in
And so
Chicago.
reconfiguration becomes not
Oh.
just like a matter of ideals, but a matter of necessity.
Yes, and it is hard. It is hard. I have cried. You know what I mean? Like, and so I am going through that actively of, oh, okay, this is the person that you were dishonest with me about. And I still see you and that person
Oh,
every single week. Yeah. Do you know how much that hurts? And do you know how much I've had to work through with the person who lied to me, with the
mm-hmm.
other people? And then everybody is, it's almost like a fishbowl. We're all kind of related. We all kind of watch each other. So
Just don't be
yeah,
beta fish.
yeah, we don't fight. We don't fight. So one of the relationships I was in, for about a year, we have reconfigured to not be relating anymore because of that dynamic, but are still like more spacious friends. And I think from some of my other people in my world, I think what becomes really tricky is when you are trying to reconfigure with someone who has trauma,
Mm-hmm.
or difficulty relating and can make that extremely painful, extremely difficult. And of course, we want to be healing in community, but what happens when one of
Mm-hmm.
those community members repeatedly harms you and the boundaries you have to take and all of that? It's like we have these lofty goals of staying in connection. I want to be in connection. I want to be committed. My goal is to not have any more breakups in my entire life. Like I only want to
Mm-hmm.
have reconfigurations. But that
Oh,
lofty
that is
goal,
quite the goal. I
I
love
know.
that's a great aspiration, honestly.
But it requires not just me to have that, it requires the person that I'm relating to have that too, because we have
Mm-hmm.
to look at each other and be like, hey, no matter what happens, if we get really frustrated with each other, we will figure out whatever it is that is bothering us, whether that means we need more space, we need to take off this way of relating, we need to change. Like, hey, we're committed to that, okay? I'm looking at you. We're
Mm-hmm.
committed, right? We're committed. And
That's like such a comforting
uh,
and secure thing too. Like
yeah,
that
it's
if
so
you're
hot.
both committed, I mean, yeah, it
Oh,
sounds difficult, but like to commit to still cultivating that connection because you find that
yes.
connection inherently valuable no matter what form it takes. Like
Uh-huh.
that's the thing with me and the person that I've been kind of on and off romantically interested in. We've been such dear friends and we've only gotten closer since the reconfiguration. It's not even a
Right.
breakup. I'm like
Right.
I have such a metanormative vocabulary that when I
Sure.
describe it to my friends, I've described it as like a breakup, and it's kind of breaking through to me now. I'm like, oh, I've had this reconfiguration, not even the de-escalation, because if I'm being
Right.
honest, we've had moments of intimacy that have
Right. Right.
transcended like anything that was in even the context of the relationship
Right.
before like a specific romantic scripted relationship, and
Mm-hmm.
we've uncovered new depths about each other and just
Right.
great conversations, and we've just remained dear friends for yeah, almost 2.5 years, and
Amazing.
it's been really wonderful,
Mm-hmm.
and I just am overjoyed no matter what, whether the emotion is more platonic or romantic or whatnot,
Right.
in just whatever form that connection is taken, and all the different ways we can derive value from each other. And then I've also
Mm-hmm.
like just learned to appreciate, like, rather than being like, oh, I'm gonna orient myself around this person because there's this particular kind of feeling. I'm like, oh, I really, really appreciate the queer platonic feeling, even though I might not have the as many profound philosophical conversations as I have with this other person. Like I can watch Heartstopper and just see the reaction, and it's really sweet and wholesome, and they can introduce me to this music that I find really comforting, or these different things, like you were saying, like there's these different value points that you find
Mm-hmm.
in different
Yeah.
connections.
Yeah,
And like
absolutely.
not being in a capital R relationship where you're an item has given me that freedom in a lot of ways to kind of
Yeah.
explore the different ways of connection. I mean, they're fluid on the polyamory non-monogamy front, so they would be definitely open to, if we were to ever be in a type of relationship, to have that be kind of fluid and have some non-monogamous aspects in there. And
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just really grateful for the expansiveness of my connections,
Totally. Yeah.
and just that I can have so much value in my life from my friendships and
Mm-hmm.
family and pets and all of that.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I think that given what we were talking about earlier, the levels of deep, deep, deep unconscious conditioning of what it means to be in, like you said, a capital R relationship, right? There is a lot that people will assume this is how you're supposed to be in a relationship. This
Mm-hmm.
is what you're supposed to do in relationship. This is how you're supposed to show up
Mm-hmm.
in relationship. And so like you were sharing with yours, you've been able to have more intimacy when you took off that capital R. Like, yeah, I've had
Mm-hmm.
that with someone specifically who, when we took off the word R relationship, capital
Mm-hmm.
R relationship, they started actually telling me how they feel. And I said, why couldn't you have told me this? And they're like, well, we were in a relationship. I just didn't really think.
Like it was such an intimidating thing
Like,
to
oh,
like
shit.
present to society, especially as an item, because you can be like an item in your own time and I mean like
Ugh.
I've at least had the experience with this particular person that I can just like I can talk with them about just about anything and just be very emotionally vulnerable with them and be like, hey, yeah, we can both be like, hey, yeah, we're into these people and we've
Yeah.
in like a sexual way or in their case sometimes a more romantic way. Like I've only had interest in them for the last couple of years, which is why I don't really identify as polyamorous because I'm like amory is very romance coded and very like I don't know if I'll form like romantic feelings like this for the rest of my life. But there's such a spectrum of like different emotions and like relationship
Mhm.
anarchy kind of frees me from the expectation of like, oh, I'm forming multiple connections and multiple capital R relationships because I'm like, I don't actually want more capital R relationships. I want more expansiveness of what a relationship can
Right.
mean. Which,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I think that that is a learning process as much as it is for you, for me, and all the people that we are relating to.
Mhm.
And so having that compassion as we go through it with folks, because we will certainly run into pieces of that where we didn't even realize we had a quote unquote expectation of what it means to be in a capital R
Mhm.
relationship or a lowercase r, right? The other way. And so we're
What
kind
does
of
it mean to
already.
be in a lower? What was? Sorry,
uh,
I know what a capital R, but like what is a lowercase R
I'm
in
just
your mind?
I have never I don't think I've heard anybody use that term, but I'm making it up on the spot because if capital R means romantic-y, you're the
Mhm.
one. I guess lowercase r means to actually co-create, what you're doing with that person, which is, hey,
So lowercase R is kind of relationship anarchy esque.
maybe, I don't know, yeah, whatever we want it to mean for ourselves. Because, yeah, capital R means like you're in the relationship. Because people use that language like, oh, I have a relationship that I'm, like, oh, I'm in a relationship. I'm like, well, duh. Like, don't you can't, like, of course you are. When you were a
I mean,
baby,
you
you were
can't like if
raised
you're
by
connecting with
folks.
people, you can't avoid being in a
Right, right,
because
right, right,
you've
right,
kind of
right.
deprogrammed the amount of normativity quite a bit more than most people have.
Right.
You literally have a PhD thesis on relationship anarchy. I believe, like you know your stuff. I mean, like everyone's in a constant process, but you know your shit.
Sure, exactly. So then I have to kind of slow down sometimes because it's like some people are still plugged
Not go
into the
off on a whole
matrix.
tangent.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Totally, totally.
I
Which
mean,
we're,
like, yeah, I definitely get that with like special interests that I burn for. I know that like with my specific political philosophies or like
yeah,
philosophical outlooks in general, like metaphysically or whatever, I will go off on whole tangents that no one asked for.
for sure, for sure. I feel that. I feel that. And these days, the majority of people that are orbiting pretty close to me are all relationship anarchists because I need people who understand what I'm doing. Otherwise, I am just, what am I doing? Like I gotta get someone who looks at me and says, yes, Nicole, I understand what you're saying and I see your vision
Mhm.
and I want to do it with you. And that's been the hottest thing in the entire world.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, like
for sure.
this is like the hottest thing in the entire world when someone just shares your like core values to such a level of depth
Yeah.
and
Yep.
to like you can have like deep, very expansive conversations about your values and your philosophical outlook and just like and really get to know like the whole universe inside each other. Like that is such a sexy thing.
Totally, totally, totally. So we're already hitting on the next question, which is how does relationship anarchy impact your practice of intimacy? To mirror a little bit of what you were just saying, I'm hearing the ways that your practice of relationship anarchy is really about deconstructing relationship expectations and then co-creating what feels good for the two of you. And so when you find someone who has that same sort of vision, when you find someone who has that same sort of vision, you can feel the power of that intimacy, the seenness with it. And so it really sparks that for you. But are there other ways that you feel like relationship anarchy impacts your practice of intimacy?
Yeah, I'm gonna need to collect my thoughts a little bit for
Sure.
this. but I'm gonna like just pause for a little bit because I really
Mm-hmm.
want to get the right delivery.
Totally. Take your time.
I think, I mean, deconstructing also my romantic orientation has been
Mm-hmm.
interesting because I've realized how much I crave intimacy, but that hasn't been really as much related to the romantic scripts that I've been handed down
Mm-hmm.
as I would have thought. Like a couple years ago, or even past that, probably, I would have considered myself like a very romantic person and like just a
Mm-hmm.
very oriented towards relationships and very oriented and like, but then I started deconstructing. I'm like, I wasn't actually in it for the feeling of being an item or being like in this monogamous exclusive relationship escalator type dynamic. It was more for the intimacy in and for itself. And I've even before I like identified with the label like relationship anarchist or whatever, I found like moments of intimacy with like friends or friends with benefits or
Mm-hmm.
what or platonic, whatever you want to call it at a given moment, like has been just as good, if not better, than when it's been in the context of a
Yeah.
relationship. This was even before I like started questioning my romantic orientation and like, huh, I don't actually want to be in a relationship with this person just because some people are saying I should.
Right.
Like, huh, I just enjoy this how it is. I kind of enjoy just having sex and having that moment of intimacy without having it be this like script and this like huge expectation. Sorry, I live in a house with people, so I'm just hopefully you can hear me and
I
hopefully this
can.
picks
Yeah.
up.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is.
But um but it's sorry, I'm just trying to
It's
collect my
okay.
thoughts.
Yeah, take
And
a deep
also,
breath. You're
also
good.
on the other end, because I'm allosexual, despite like being demi-romantic, I'm definitely allosexual, and I definitely experience like sexual attraction to a high degree, and like sometimes even to the point of like hypersexuality. And so and my queer like the person that I'm queer platonic with, I mean, one of them is like completely ace, and also interestingly enough, like a very kind of leaning towards a hyper romantic end of the spectrum. And I like there's someone I met in college that I didn't really expect I'd form really much of anything with, but I had my dog pass away, and I guess there's sometimes a silver lining to everything. But I really reached out to them and like I was like, "Hey, can I cuddle you? Like, I sorry if this is a weird request." And they're like, "Yeah, actually, I'd be into that."
Mm-hmm.
And so we just kind of been cuddle buddies a lot and just like watched shows together and held hands and just had this. I've like learned to have an appreciation of just intimacy and affection that hasn't contained a romantic or sexual element to it.
Mm-hmm.
And like conditioning my mind from the very like allosexual, alloromantic view of like relationship escalator stuff that has the expectation of sex and sexual exclusivity and all these different things and just deciding no, I'm going to construct my relationships how I want. And even though this doesn't seem at base level to be compatible, like I'm like it actually works for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
And like if they decide to get into a relationship with someone like in a more romantic exclusive way, that's fine. And like we can reconfigure like we are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing with like the friend that I've had like on and off romantic feelings for, and like who I feel like a deep, dear sense of friendship with, and just the connection that exists there. Like it doesn't. They have kind of a relationship anarchist. They specifically have a like very relationship anarchist kind of understanding of things that they're not going to devalue their other relationships just because they're in a romantic relationship, which makes me like less fearful about it. I've realized that what I'm fearful about hasn't actually been around the romantic relationship itself, but like, will they still care about me? Will they still value me? Type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
because it's kind of this like all or nothing mindset in our society that,
Mm-hmm.
and just learning about relationship anarchy has just liberated me from that, liberated my relationships from that for a large degree, and given me a more expansive approach to intimacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. My OG listeners of the podcast will know that I talk about having a post-it wall behind my screen that I'm talking to you right now. And so one of the post-it notes that I have up there is there's not just a relationship escalator, there's also an intimacy escalator and a physical touch escalator, right? And so
Mhm.
many of us will pair snuggling, holding hands as being a escalator. That means you're working towards a sexual relationship, right? And
hmm Or a
wow,
romantic relationship with which I
yeah.
like it's off-putting for me because I'm like, hey, yeah, just because I want to cuddle you doesn't mean I want like an exclusive romantic relationship or really any type of romantic relationship with you. Like I'm actually into the idea of platonic kissing, which is kind of an unpopular opinion.
Sure, 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 sure. I hear what you're saying, right? And so the more that we can unpack that, the more love and intimacy and social touch needs we can get satisfied.
hmm
But it takes a lot of deconstruction for all of us, right? Because I know in past versions of my consciousness, if I was snuggling with someone, I would probably be in my head worried that it was going to go to a next step and I wasn't sure if I wanted to have sex and I don't know if I could have communicated that and la 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 la. I would have been spinning
hmm
in my head. And I know that, right? I know my past version of myself who didn't have as much embodiment with my like ability to know my boundaries and how I would work with my body and sort of the ability
hmm
now to have more insight with that and be able to actually name there's people I've kissed and then I only want to kiss. I actually don't want to go any further
hmm
than that. And even that takes a lot of insight to say, wow, this feels good and I'm not going to let it escalate to more because that actually doesn't feel in alignment. That's a lot of communication skills
And
for
it's a
your
lot of
average
introspection
human.
too.
Yeah,
It's like a lot of like, oh, what do I actually want? Like,
right.
'cause sometimes I'll like be like really slutty and just like really like
Hmm.
that way, and then I had this happen the other day, like I think it was like Monday or something. And I was at this party and I was like flirting with a few different people and like saying we should have like joking we should have like a foursome or like these
Hmm.
different things and like then I was like, oh wait, this person has a dick. I don't know if I actually want to like deal with that right now because I have trauma associated with that and
Hmm. Sure,
and I'm like, maybe I could enjoy kissing them or just doing these different things, but I'm like, it would take a lot for me to like to develop that level of intimacy with someone with that anatomy because of certain stuff
sure.
from my past.
Totally, 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 totally. And so this is almost the exact opposite of the cultural expectation that, oh, we just had sex. We just flowed into it. I put that in air quotes,
Mhm.
right? The if you talk about it, it makes it not sexy anymore, right? So much of our cultural scripts, I know, it's utterly ridiculous, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to help
Oh
all
yeah,
of
that
us
was that
have
was
more
just
communication.
what I'm like one-night stands. I'm like those don't sound nearly as a like I mean if I'm really
Right.
needing that like release, maybe, but like at the same time I'm like I would rather have like some sort of connection beyond just I don't know. I mean, it's something I'm not completely closed off to, but it's also not my preference.
Sure. Yeah. So I think the biggest piece of it all being what you're speaking to is the ability to name where your own boundaries, your own pleasure and desire ends and begins. And for most of us, we live in this culture where it is assumed that you just flow into intimacy and it's not something that you talk about. And
Mhm.
for many people, it's zero
And
to
it's like so stupid too.
100.
Like why wouldn't you talk about like the boundaries and like and
Well,
like what your priorities are and like what you're looking for like in
it's
yeah, I'm
called
like,
purity culture.
oh yeah. I mean,
It is
I should
called
know that. Like
purity
but I'm
culture.
like but I was thinking about like friends with benefits like in situationships like that. I'm like and like purity culture has like a very specific idea of like it's tied to marriage, it's tied to all these religious puritanical like sexual repression things, but then thinking of it in the context of like a metanormativity, that's kind of mind-blowing, and like how purity culture forms like it's like this vicious cycle thing in our collective I guess
Yeah.
imagination.
Yeah, you know where abuse of power thrives? In the dark. And so when we have a culture that says purity and you're not supposed to talk about sexuality because this is something that
Mhm.
happens behind closed
Purity culture is rape
doors,
culture.
it is all connected. So when you can't
Mhm.
be able to talk to your family, when you can't be able to talk to people in your life about your sexual dynamics because that's not pure and that's forbidden and wrong and taboo, that's where abuses of power exist. And that's why we all don't have the
I definitely
fucking
experienced that. Like
language
the
because we're
person who
not
abused me
able
wasn't
to like,
religious,
sorry, can
but
I
they
finish? Is it okay?
I'm so
Sorry, sorry.
sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, when we don't have that language, where sorry, it's so hard to remember. Okay.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. I know it's passionate. We get excited.
Mhm.
Yeah, when we're not able to communicate with other people, we literally don't have the language. We form language in community. And so we have to practice communicating about these dynamics to be able to actually get the language. It's like the emotion wheel in therapy, right? And so when you're with a therapist and they start having you point out the emotions and communicating it, it creates the language. And so because of purity culture, we're so close-lipped about anything sexually. So we don't have the skills because it's
Mhm.
literally a language that we have not developed for most of us. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I remember like being sexually abused when I was younger and being groomed. Like I was like so afraid that like my parents would see me as like some sort of adulterer or like
Mm,
something, and then my grandma really fed into that, and it was this whole thing of like, and the religion really put the salt in the wounds of like the
sure.
rape that I experienced and like all the trauma of that. And I just, that's part of the reason why it was like so necessary for me to just like cut that off as soon as I could. That like toxic religious culture, like the
Yeah.
victim blaming and the queer phobia, as I was like discovering that I was like bisexual at that
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Compounding traumas is what I'm hearing, right? Compounding
Yeah,
traumas.
compounding traumas. Yeah, that's a great
Yeah.
term for it. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so, and I definitely felt the need to like, I don't know, and it just added a whole extra layer and just like persecution for coming out as bisexual. And the like that year, like sixth grade or so, was absolute hell
Mm,
for me.
yeah.
Middle school's already bad enough without it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
not to completely trauma dump, but just
Sure, sure. I mean, it's all related, right? We're talking about the various traumas and the systems of oppression that are impacting our ability to practice intimacy. It's all related. And so I'm curious if there's anything that you would want to say to your younger self in this moment, given the wisdom, the enlightenment, the insight that you have now. Is there anything that you'd want to say to that younger self?
that's a really beautiful question. I'm just gonna try to articulate that.
Yeah.
I'd say that you'll be able to find your freedom. You'll be able to find people who affirm you for exactly who you are, rather than having this very conditional love. And that you'll find love that's free of agendas and
Mm,
that is organic and that really makes you happy and really makes you fulfilled.
yeah.
And that this trauma doesn't define the whole course of your life. Like this hellish period you're going through now isn't the defining feature of your existence, and that there's so much joy that you're going to have and
Mm,
so much delight in all the connections you're going to form. And you're going to have a couple of years where you feel fucking lonely and like you feel you don't have anyone in your corner, but as life goes on, you'll find more and more people and more ways to expand relationships, and you'll find that sexual intimacy goes so far beyond the abuse that you've experienced and the repression that your culture tells you sexual intimacy outside of marriage or whatnot is. And
hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, such wise, loving, kind words to share, right? I hope all of us, me, the listeners, can feel that in their hearts, right? That optimism, that hope, the ability to know that it does get better, right? And so I
and
appreciate you. Yeah.
it's definitely difficult, like looking forward in the future. Being in the present is just the skill that I've been trying to cultivate especially these
Yeah.
last few days, because this election.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot to
Yeah,
practice presence. That's a never-ending practice.
and it's,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. And just the dread I
Totally.
experience and how I feel like what I've developed, like I feel like I have so much to lose, but like then I've just been trying to go on the other side of that and being grateful for the fact that I have so much in my life that like
Yeah.
I'm fearing of losing. Like
Mm-hmm.
taking that optimistic outlook of like there's so much in my life that I can attune to right now rather than
Yeah.
sitting in that place of dread forever.
Absolutely, absolutely. So gratitude for what you have in the here and the now. And I want to, no good segue to the next question then, which is kind of the
Mhm.
opposite. What are the difficulties of relationship anarchy? We'll get to the joys and the gratitude, but holding a little bit of space right now, what are some of the difficulties that you've experienced with relationship anarchy?
Mostly, a lot of it is trying to explain it.
Mm, sure, to other people.
Trying to explain it to people and like using the wrong terms. Like I was explaining it to a philosophy club group, and I was like, no boundaries between the this type of relationship or this type of relationship. They're like, no boundaries, and I like rung like red flags in them, and they're like, no boundaries in the relationships. I'm like, no, no, that's not what I meant. I mean, like, no hierarchies of value, and like, and then just like having the response of like, well, that sounds impractical. Like, I don't know, like just like I do with like all my political philosophies, and just like
Yeah.
feeling like I'm this pipe dreamer about
Sure.
connection based on the societal response. Like, I mean,
Totally.
not even like the societal response, but just like people personally I'm interacting with, and like some people just like I don't know, my dad has been kind of, oh, we'll see on the marriage and children front, even though I've made it like very clear, especially with children, that I'm like, no, I don't want this. I don't want this as a part
Yeah.
of my life. Ever
Yeah.
since I was like very young, I was like, I don't want this. This is not something I want as a part of my life. This is not
Right.
something that fits with my internal value system. And then him being just kind of like just people being kind of dismissive, and
Mm.
people in society like going out of its way to like push this tyrannical nuclear family model, and just like persecuting anyone who deviates from that, and especially people who are queer, like trans and all of that, and like have relationships that defy the norms of the fucking 1950s.
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will share that my research, that was one of the main answers to this question, is the most difficult piece is feeling like an alien, feeling like no one understands what the hell I'm talking about when I say relationship anarchy. And so this feeling of isolation, which is what contributes to mental health distress, right? And mental health disorders, is feeling like you're misunderstood, feeling like there's nobody that you can talk to that gets it, which is part of
And this
why.
interview is so good for my mental health, because like there's been someone practicing this for like 4 years who has a PhD thesis on it, and is just like, and is just constantly introspecting and developing, and like, and is giving me new language to like reconfiguration
Mm,
rather than de-escalation, and just like
sure.
better terminology and better ways of expansive understanding. And so thank you for that.
Of course, of course. Stay tuned. I'm just getting started, right? I'm just
Oh
getting
yeah, I'm gonna
started.
listen to every podcast episode. Like during this like winter break, I'm going to like go crazy with that shit.
Great. I'm so excited for you to dive
It's
in. I
such a
hope you have a
controversial
lot.
interest of mine, and it's just like something I'm really
Totally.
wanting to cultivate within myself. And I'm like really interested because like I've had like a special interest in like psychedelics and like expansive
Sure.
consciousness, mindfulness, and just all the intersections of spirituality and being present and being interconnected with the world,
Mhm.
and all the philosophies around that. Like it's just
Yep.
like, and then like connecting that with intimacy and connection, which is just like some of the most valuable stuff in my life, and also just like self-determination. I'm like, that is my cup of tea right there.
Totally. And my family is Mormon, so I'm sure you'll enjoy going down my
Oh,
whole
sick.
healing arc of the last, many years of this podcast. You can just watch me heal and expand and heal and expand, through these conversations. So I'm sure you'll enjoy them. And I'm happy to have this space for you. I'm happy to have this space for myself. It feels good. And for all the listeners who really tune into these episodes to see an example
Because
of
yeah, I bet that
relationship anarchy.
many of them have experienced horrible things from purity culture as well.
Yeah, that's a whole part of my journey. Like about a year ago, I think that was one of the main topics I was exploring. I've explored less as I've moved,
As
you're
you
never,
move towards
yeah.
more, I unfortunately haven't had as much exposure as I'd like to before this interview, but what are the themes you're currently focusing on, and like in your own introspection and your podcast and all of that?
Yeah, I think I want to work towards an embodied liberation. Like I said earlier, there's going to be so many different paths to that. And so there's not one way, but I want people to be in their bodies. I want people to feel pleasure and I want people to be free. And I know that freedom's a complex, given everything we've talked about with the
Systems of
social.
oppression.
Yes, the systems of repression, the social conditioning, the ways that that goes into our unconscious. I want to be able to have conversations about pleasure, about embodiment, whether that's sex, drugs, intimacy, relationships, right? All of that so that we can make an informed decision, right? And so I hope that these conversations will continue to unfold in that space of pleasure and expansion. And so, yeah, it's all
How
happening.
how is like mind altering, not even just drugs, but it can include that as well. Like I mean, like drugs in like the sense of like psychedelics and whatnot,
Mhm.
and like spiritually enhancing substances. Like how does that have intersected with your like relationship anarchy practice? Like I know I'll discover a lot of that through your podcast, but I'm just like very
Totally.
eager to know.
Yeah.
Just a quick.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think about specifically within American culture, the war on drugs and against people
Mhm.
of color specifically, right? So I think about the ways that these substances and power structures, right? And so the ways that that impacts all of our access to it, the way that that impacts all of our understanding of drugs is something that's negative
Mhm.
and shame-based that you should not do, let alone the fact that we prescribe drugs all the fucking time and alcohol is a
We have
drug.
an opioid
Yeah.
epidemic, and weeds, like, either, I mean, here in Utah it's like heavily regulated, like you can have medical marijuana like under very specific conditions,
Oh,
but
interesting. Yeah.
alcohol just
Right.
yeah, you're over 21, you have an ID, you can get alcohol, which is a much more damaging drug and
Hmm.
has a lot more kind of both nicotine and alcohol. We both know this, but I'm just like going off on a rant. But like the fact that
Sure.
they both have like such higher rates of like physical dependency and like
Right.
damage to relationships and everything, it's just like a whole thing. And it
Right.
pisses me off.
Right. So I think about all of the power structures that are
Mhm.
impacting our relationships to substances and the way that we see ourselves, as well as the fact that everything I've studied with chaotic use, we often call that addiction, but chaotic use of substances is often, again, a relational problem, not just to people,
Mhm.
but systems of oppression. The
Mhm.
relationship to that system is impacting them, as well as the actual human relationships that are impacting them. So I don't see addiction or chaotic use as a person problem, as a disease. I see it more as a relational problem, both to people and systems. And so that's connected to
I
relationship
absolutely
anarchy.
agree. Everything that like is a personal problem ties back to being a systemic problem on some
Yeah.
level. Like even like the mental disorders you're born with, there's like microplastics that interact with your genes in strange ways that can fuck you over in that way, and like, or especially conditions that you develop because of trauma related to poverty, and just it's this whole thing, and like every single emotional issue can be tied back to all the ways that systems of oppression manifest in every person's life, and
Hmm.
the intersecting ways in which countless people are oppressed by
Yeah.
those systems. And also, speaking of addiction, I've heard that psychedelics actually curb that addictive potential of other drugs, and like that there's been research into like it being really effective for like helping people stop smoking and like just helping people develop a more balanced and holistic approach to their life in general. And like, would you say that psychedelics liberate connection in in the right set and setting, because obviously set and setting are vitally important for anything like that.
Set and setting is absolutely incredibly important. So, yeah, I think in the right community setting, which again we talked about is systems, right? So, in the right system and container, it can absolutely help to curb those things. And also, it's like all things. All things have light and dark sides, right? So, there can be a lot of healing in it, but also people get addicted to psychedelics too. And so, it's
They do.
definitely, oh yeah, for
I heard
sure.
that it doesn't have much addictive potential, but is
Yes.
people just like addictive to that like introspection? Like, because I've heard it's like a very
Uh,
introspective experience and like a very like revealing openings within your own mind.
Yeah,
Like,
so you can
yeah.
absolutely become addicted to ketamine, a psychedelic that I work
Oh,
with in therapy. You can absolutely, some people consider cannabis a psychedelic, right? You can become addicted to
okay,
that.
yeah,
There are
no, yeah,
people who
people
become,
are definitely, yeah,
yeah, addicted to
people.
even psilocybin, right? Using it every day, using big trips all the time, and then never integrating it. And so that's absolutely
Not taking
possible.
time and space to reflect on how those
Yeah.
experiences.
Yep. So it's light and dark. Everything has a light and dark. Kink, right, has a light and a dark. You can
Hmm.
absolutely heal and have creative play, expansive relationships. And there can also be harm. There can be poor consent conversations. There can be lack of
Hmm.
care, right? I usually compare psychedelics in a similar way where it's like there can be so much healing in that. Whoa. And also there can absolutely be a shadow side to it. And so I think that all
I
things
mean,
in
like,
life,
can
right?
also definitely be an excuse for bad actors to like be like, oh, we're doing consensual non free use or consensual non-consent, or like misusing these terms to people who are newer or whatever, and just
Yeah.
like
Abuse of
manipulating them in
power.
terrible ways. But it can also be if like people are being genuine and like doing it in good faith and doing it to heal and
Hmm.
to just have fun, then that can be a very healthy thing. Like, it's the balance and it's the intention, and I think that's
Totally.
the case with almost anything in
Yep.
life that you
Yep.
encounter, any connection with anything, and talking about connection in a like a very broad way with substances, with your own kinks and your own like sexual orientation and romantic identity and all the different and the interplay of all of that and how you bring that out into the world and how and just being very mindful of the type of people you're around and how much respect they have for you as a person.
Absolutely.
Like I said,
Yeah.
circling back to kink, that is, and yeah, kink is going to be a very interesting thing to practice as like specifically, explicitly a relationship anarchist. I'm looking forward to that.
You're gonna
Like,
love my podcast. You're gonna love diving into all of that content. So I hope you enjoy because I have
I know I'm
lots
going
of
to love your
content.
podcast. I knew from like the first episode I listened to that I
Amazing.
yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. So in terms of balancing the light and the dark, right? And knowing that all things have that, the next question is, what are the joys of relationship anarchy?
Oh, it's so joyful to just have that freedom to customize my relationships and to like pick what I want rather than like saying you have to like commit your whole life to this person and like sacrifice a bunch of your well-being. I can be like, oh wait, there can just be such a symbiosis here. It's not like kind of sacrifice or emptiness or just like, and that ties back to the purity culture and like the religious, like you're expected to like sacrifice your meals, your fucking tithing 10% of your income, just even if you're fucking poor, you're expected to just like give that away and like take apart pieces of yourself and pieces of your autonomy to that religion. And I feel like society has treated relationships in much the same way, but like it's a truly like if you're practicing it right, it's a truly anarchist approach to relationships where it's not based on this power imbalance. It's not based on this like idea that you have to like take away something of yourself to be symbiotic and to like flourish in your connections and really enjoy that. I really enjoy being like I have all the room in the world to like explore queer platonic connections and friends with benefits and possibly a
Mm.
little romance sprinkled in here when I'm in the mood and
Yeah.
like deepening my friendships even if they're
Mm.
just completely platonic and like even yeah my like best friend who like just feels like a brother to me and then like my like little brother who were like both working through our like individual trans journeys and just seeing those all as equally valuable and like equally valuable fulfilling layers of life and just
Hmm.
taking it all in and taking in all the gratitude that comes with it and
Yeah.
it's like a very liberating and expansive thing and you even just as an absolute amateur and like absolute just starting out on this path I've gotten a sense of the boundlessness and the expansiveness that love
Mm.
have in a way that I wasn't when I was in traditional
Yeah.
like escalator relationships because I was focusing all my energy into this one person because that's what was expected to do and getting along with their family even though their family could be kind of shitty and having to navigate all of those dynamics and like and this gives me the freedom to also take a step back and be like okay I'm going to cultivate the relationship with myself and my connection with great podcasts like yours or like great books or like just and just like self growth and it just gave me
Mm.
so much autonomy and so much power over my own life that I wouldn't have just strictly adhering to all these scripts.
Yeah, the abundance of opportunity, the abundance of
I
creativity. It
love that
really is
feeling so
endless.
much. I love the
Yeah.
feeling that I know I can explore and I know I can like we were talking about with reconfiguration, it's not de-escalation. If it's like if with my friend we've had moments like where we weren't as affectionate or intimate or whatever, but it was still equal. I mean, and intimacy. I mean, in the physical sense, I was talking about, but like intimacy can also be like a profound philosophical conversation, or just like knowing that someone's there for you in like a
Hmm.
moment, whatever you have to say, that they're here and they're here to support you. Like
Hmm.
that's just as intimate as any expectation of sex or romance or any of that. Like, and just
Right.
recognizing that I like
Right.
I've gotten such a fuller sense of value from having
Mm-hmm.
this mindset. I mean, I
Yeah.
haven't had the opportunity to explore as much as I'd like to because I mean, like, I have a life outside of my philosophical outlook and how I try to apply that. But I don't know. I'm just really, and I'm just, it gives me so much to look forward to.
That's so beautiful. So
What about you?
beautiful.
Like, what are the main like appeals to you for relationship anarchy? What are the
Oof.
joys?
Circles of laughter, circles of snuggles, kisses, holding hands, dancing, care, tears. holding each other in those tears, right? Just I really love how wide my circle can be and the ways that I overlap in other one. I mean, it is just such a joy to be able to have so many different people that I can connect with and have intimacy with. I feel so deeply connected in so many intimate relationships that I feel this abundance of love around me. And then therefore I'm able to give back to other people more abundantly and softer and more gently. And so that is something that has absolutely changed my life, and I'm only just getting started. So I can't even
Oh, yeah.
fathom the amount
It's
of love and
totally
abundance and care that I am
just coming your
crafting.
way.
Yeah, so I'm like, oh my God, this garden is so cool. I have so many good things growing right now. This is amazing, right? And so don't get me wrong, there, like I said, right, there are so many days where I've been crying, confused, what is my life? Can I even do this? Where am I going? What am I doing? But when I'm able to take a deep breath and relax and come back to my body, I can come back to the space of joy and gratitude for all of the beautiful garden that I am creating.
And I like part of me also feels gratitude for the process. Like
Oh,
I almost feel
yes, that's
gratitude for the
that's
pain and
important.
suffering I suffered before, so I just know that I have that perspective of how good it is now.
Yeah, 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 totally, totally. And your expansion is uncomfortable, right? There is no amount of expansion that is going to feel easy. That's not
Mhm.
how we grow. We grow in discomfort. And so embracing that, of course, we don't want to force ourselves into situations where we're being hurt, abused, et cetera, et cetera. But in before that space, like any good athlete knows, right, is you have to push yourself and
Mhm.
extend and really push in that way. And so growth is never going to be comfortable. And so I hope that both us and all of the listeners can continue to expand and push past our comfort to stretch and then be held in community when we need to. When I am crying and I have so many people pouring in that love, that's what we all need
That's
when
such a wonderful thing. I think that's what
yeah,
every living being needs.
absolutely. Well, then, yeah, what do you wish other people knew about relationship anarchy? That's the last question here. And I think that you've shared so much of what other people should know, but
I'm
I'm
trying to come up with something new because
curious.
I've said so much about this topic and I want to explore it more and I want to like discover more like through your podcast and through different resources and just
Hmm.
like expand my understanding and like expand the depth of all of that and all the ways they intersect.
Yeah.
You said how do I wish what I wish people knew about relationship anarchy?
Yeah, yeah. I'm so grateful for everything that you have shared today, and I want to
Well, I'm
make
so
sure we
grateful for you giving me like an opportunity to talk about this with someone who really understands that world
Mm,
and the beauty of it. Um,
yeah.
and I really deeply appreciate that. And I really
Mm,
appreciate just feeling so heard
yeah.
and feeling like I can relate to someone on this like on such a deep level and like I that I can't that I can talk for like almost 2 hours about
Hell
just like
yeah.
the real yeah like we're about like an intense special interest that I've wanted to invest more and more energy in.
Yeah, of course, of course. You're in the right space. Yeah.
To help me answer this question, I remember having a conversation you had. I
Mm.
can't pinpoint names. I'm terrible at names, but you were talking about the difference between relationship anarchy and relationship libertarianism.
Mel Cassidy. Yes, yes. That is a great
Wait,
episode.
could you elaborate on that a little bit? Like the Mel Cassidy, I didn't know that specific term.
Yeah, so we had talked about the ways that libertarianism is hyper individual,
Hmm.
right? The individual has all the freedom, where anarchy and its philosophy is actually about
It's community
community
oriented.
care. Yeah, exactly. And so the person who goes around in their life and says, I'm a relationship anarchist, you
And
can't
just fucks
control me,
around and
fuck
sleeps
you.
around and like
That's,
doesn't
yes.
like emotionally invest in anyone and doesn't give a shit about. Yeah.
That's maybe
Like
more libertarianism than anarchy. So
I
we
mean, like
could,
in a like very, it's very funny. This is a little bit of a political tangent, but like the political history, like libertarian used to mean like communist and very community oriented and very like labor rights, like in like the days of like the late 19th, early 20th century when people were like starting communes and resisting big corporations. But now it's just
Mhm.
often been just like corporate right wing suck ups. It's been so distorted by like corporate media and everything. Just that, yeah, this whole side tangent, but like that relationship anarchy isn't that, and it's not an excuse to like
Mm.
disregard someone's boundaries and disregard someone's preferences, and like
Mhm.
and that it is like very much about that community and very much about not just autonomy but connection and like that those things go hand in hand in that community and autonomy. Like you don't have to sacrifice who you are and your authenticity to be a part of a community of
Yeah.
beautiful connections. And like the good connections will affirm you for who you are in your gender identity, sexual orientation, romantic, different philosophical outlooks, that you can be in that community and you can cultivate a safe space through relationship anarchy. Because like just culturally, we have such an idea of anarchy that's like chaos, discord, like anything goes. Like it's the natural impulse for people to like transmute that, try to transmute to that into like the interpersonal sense, when really I'm so grateful that I have like that I'm such a nerd and that I have this understanding of the political philosophy of it, because I'm like that really enhances my understanding of relationship anarchy and like just a
Sure.
little bit of the history of that, and like Emma Goldman and like these different
Right.
figures
Yep.
who were like real badasses and like
Totally.
really fought for the rights of marginalized groups,
Yeah.
and that anarchy was also always social justice and not just Joker edge lords or whoever.
Right. Right.
Like,
Totally.
and it's about having thriving, vibrant communities and thriving, vibrant relationships with like if you have pets, or if you like a vibrant, healthy relationship with knowledge and your own introspection and your own musings. And it's just about this like the anarch-relating
Mm-hmm.
kind of illustrated this point to me, that like it's like anarchism as a way of life, as a way of like interpersonally engaging in your everyday. And that's like one of the
Yeah.
most powerful things you can do to get a movement against hierarchy and for flourishing autonomous connections, is to practice it on a very everyday scale, and to like honor people and honor their own individuality and honor the what you can bring to each other if you decide to form a connection of any sort.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. And so I appreciate you sharing that with the listeners and giving them such insight into
Yeah,
your
I'm more than happy
experience.
to. I'm so honored to be able to like to have like someone who's like so engaged with this and like has this as a like life's work,
Yeah.
and like bring on this newbie who like just barely got
Sure.
introduced to the concept like a
Mm.
few 3 5 months ago. I don't even know, maybe
Wow.
sometime this summer
Welcome.
fall.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Totally. Totally.
I'm very excited to explore everything further and to just explore all the layers of depth that'll bring, and like expansive joy and that connection and that like shared laughter, like you said,
Mm.
and like
Hmm.
all of those things and all those things that are my future, despite the bleakness of all the systems of oppression and
Yeah.
all. Nothing can stamp out that spirit of
Yep.
connection.
Yep.
Like no oppressive system, like that's where I disagree with 1984, honestly, because like
Sure.
1984 you have the ending where it's like very, if sorry if you haven't read a 1984, spoilers, but it's like very completely stamped out of the people, and there's no way out of just the desolate,
Mm.
connectionless, individualist,
Right.
individualless, like not having individuality, not like
Mm-hmm.
suffering under this totalitarian regime. I don't think that's actually a possible reality in my mind. I think that humanity has too much richness to experience into our connections that can never be stamped out of us, no matter how hard systems of oppression try. I think that's a
Yeah.
really beautiful thing.
I appreciate that optimism and I appreciate, yeah, everything that you've shared today because we will change the systems together, right? No single one of us
Hmm.
can change it, so we have to do it collectively. And I
Absolutely.
want
And that's
to,
the spirit of anarchy too, is it's not just like, hey, I'm just doing my own thing. I'm this the like edge lord, whoever. It's it's a
yeah.
collective, collaborative effort, like as every
Mhm.
good human project is.
Right, 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 right. Exactly, exactly. And so I will guide you towards the very last question of today. But first, I've been practicing this for myself, which is a deep breath. We gotta slow down, right? We gotta slow down, take a deep breath. Um, so what is one thing that you wish other people knew was more normal?
Having lots of intimacy with your friends.
Hell yeah.
Like I'm like,
Yes.
that is a more common thing than
Yeah.
the larger culture would have you believe. And additionally, that those things can be very, very, very fulfilling in a way that for people like me who are very unsure about the romance element of things and are very have a very turbulent
Hmm.
relationship, that like that friendship as a foundation rather than this capital R relationship and all the weird
Yeah.
expectations that come with it.
Yeah.
Like that friendship can be the very best foundation for intimacy, and like it can stay there and be every bit as fulfilling as all of those hopeless romantics with their capital R relationships and like their marriages and their families, like that our way of life can be just as fulfilling
Mhm.
and just
Mhm.
as deeply satisfying, and that shouldn't be stigmatized. Like I remember like talking to like certain people and just them being like, wait, what, you do this stuff with your friends?
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
it's stigmatized, like it's like,
Mhm.
and I wish people knew that that was a natural thing for people to do, and that it was natural for people to even have sex and kink and all these things as aspects of their friendships.
Yeah.
and
Oh.
and it's not just this like flint like shallow like like in our culture, like the idea of a friends with benefits is like such a shallow, the media portrayal of it is so shallow, and it's often like portrayed as like a stepping stone towards like an escalator style
Mhm.
relationship, and often portrayed as this, oh, you're just in this immature phase of just wanting to fuck each other and you don't know real romantic commitment yet, you'll get there, like with
Mhm.
this whole patronizing bullshit. I'm like, no, I've realized that I want to stay there, and I don't actually want that relationship escalator. I don't want to like follow these social scripts. I want to authentically embody connection as it resonates with my soul.
Mhm. Yeah, the freedom to do that. The world would be a better place when we can all hold hands, right? When we can all
Hmm.
have that liberation in our intimacy, the ability to freely love, the world will be a better place. I can feel it in my
Hmm.
body. And so I'm so, so grateful that you came onto the podcast today. So thank you for
Thank
joining
you so
me.
much for like
Yeah.
having me. It was really fulfilling and really good to get that all out and like just to articulate like to, and that you gave me
Yeah.
more language to articulate myself.
Mm,
I'm going to use reconfiguring a lot more often because that's just such an
amazing.
expansive thing that it's another tool for me to like decondition that hierarchy, and I'm like really looking forward to listening to more of your content and
Oh,
just like expanding my
yeah.
horizons, expanding my perspective of this because there's always more to learn.
Totally, totally. We grow in relationships. So thank you for growing with me and helping me to grow
Yeah,
as well. So thank you.
I'm really honored by that because I'm like, if someone's like this well into it and has this much wisdom about it, like for me to help them grow, that means a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a joy every time. So thank you. I appreciate that. If you enjoyed today's episode, then leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast. And head on over to modernanarchypodcast.com to get resources and learn more about all the things we talked about on today's episode. I want to thank you for tuning in, and I will see you all next week.